Hello, everyone, and welcome to Jill HB and Friends. This is actually following on from the previous podcast that I did with the lovely Janet Henson, because we were discussing afterwards and we went a little bit into social media and we talked about it on the previous podcast. Janet and I then thought, actually, there's a lot more to this, there's a lot more meat to the bones. So I've invited Janet back and we're going to take a bit more of a deep dive into social media. This isn't knocking social media, as we're
Mm.
really keen to point out. We both use social media and that there are huge positives, but I think it's also raising the awareness of the negatives that a lot of people don't see. Having said that, Janet, I'm sure you'll agree, I haven't seen the film or the drama that came out called
Mm.
Adolescence, but I think there's a lot of awareness now has been raised around that. I did watch a TV program, I think it was with Emma Willis and her husband, I can't remember what it was, and they asked a load of school children to give up their phones for a month. So I'm actually very pleased to be talking to you. As you say, this is to start a debate. This is not
Mm.
criticizing, this is not having a go at it. This is just, I think, a good old fashioned. You and I are old enough to remember the days of debating societies where we could look at the positives and the negatives without cancelling anybody. So,
Mm.
yeah, Janet, nice to have you back with me. As we
Yeah,
said,
it's good.
social media has absolutely changed everything in our lives, hasn't it?
It really has. And I think it's changed it for the better. I mean, I think it's helped us in a lot of
Mm.
ways. It's helped us stay connected with loved ones. It doesn't matter where they are in the world. It gives people a voice and it
Hmm.
gives opportunities that didn't exist before. I think it fuels creative expression. It opens doors to opportunities, and people have actually started businesses through social media and very successfully too. And they've also built communities. That's a big, especially, in COVID, I think it really came into its own in terms of building communities. And I think that was probably the most watched time of any reels or anything was through COVID. There was a drop off afterwards, but it was interesting how that came into play when we felt isolated. So that was quite a
And that's,
learning curve.
I mean,
And I
that's
think
when
yeah,
Zoom came in, wasn't it? Where, I mean, the old days it was
yes.
Skype, and I noticed that Skype is going to be closing down. Interestingly, they're closing that one down.
Ah,
And I
mm,
hadn't heard of Zoom, before COVID, but you're right. WhatsApp, we could video call and all of those types of things. As you say, huge amount of businesses on the back
mm,
of, but there are some businesses which aren't quite as authentic. I think that's, for me, that's what is very difficult, and particularly now with AI as well, it's really hard to
mm,
work out what's real, what's authentic, and what's just a
yes.
front or a facade. And even I've seen accounts going from being really authentic to then moving into, of course, because they build a huge following, then the ads come in, then the promotions come in, and then the whole flavor of their account, for want of a better word,
Mm.
changes quite dramatically.
Yeah, and
So,
I think we're going to deep dive a little bit deeper into that as well, because I think that's a very important point that you've made. And it's as you become more popular, and we'll talk about influencers and the
mhm.
pressures that then become relevant to influencers and how that then possibly changes their account.
Yeah.
We've learned new skills, we've found support. And we've had laughs too. You look at the memes that are there that that you want to go, you lit the mini docs, and that for me has been the value of social media, and I've found it and embraced it. But we can't ignore the other side, and I think that's really important to sort of delve into those hidden realities behind the screen,
Yeah.
because there are lots. You talked about some of them. The pressures that the influencers face, the tactics to manipulate us as the consumer, and the powerful role of the algorithm, which, as you rightly say, A1 AI, I always call it AI, it's A1, it's AI, is actually now part of what's pushing content to us. And it's a very powerful thing.
It's also when with the algorithm, of course, the more you watch something, which we're all aware of now, the more you get shown the same videos. So you get a very distorted view of life. And I'm going to say life, not reality, because
Mm.
I don't know what's real
Yes, it's life.
anyway.
Yeah.
You get a distorted view of life, don't you? Because it then kind of matches everything that you want to do. So that's the only thing that you end up seeing. And we've all seen that happen.
Yeah, exactly. Now it becomes, because we're spending more time online, it brings those serious consequences. Addiction is real.
Mm.
Mental health struggles, particularly you mentioned the film, adolescence, it's actually increasing in the younger adult population, younger children, and it's rising fast. And comparison culture is there, chipping
Mm.
away at self-confidence, particularly in younger children. There's cyberbullying, it's rampant. And, you mentioned the privacy issue there. I'm sure I'm not alone in sort of suddenly I've looked at something and then suddenly I'm being pushed adverts on it when I haven't actually looked at it even online. I might have been on the web looking at something, or I might have been on the phone or talking about
Hmm.
something. And then suddenly I'm being bombarded with adverts for it. I mean, that at first I probably thought was a coincidence, but I've since realized it's not
It
by any
happens
means.
more and more and more, doesn't it? And you're
More,
right, you
yeah.
can be out having a coffee with somebody, and my phone's off, in my handbag, and you talk about something and you go home, and then my friends even message me and said, "You're getting this for this. We were talking about this at lunchtime." I'm going, "Yep, I'm getting very similar adverts." So it does make you go, "Hmm, we don't have the kind of, speakers in the house." And you
Mm.
say, "Oh, just say into your smart speaker such and such, and it'll play so and so." We actually don't have those. Maybe we're a bit antiquated going, no, we don't really want another set of ears in here. But you're right,
Mm.
influencers, and it was quite, I saw some research where they were looking and asking people, what's one of the most popular jobs that people want to do these days, particularly youngsters, and it's either it's an influencer. And you
Yeah, it's a
think,
wannabe
wow.
influencer. Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, a
because they're
wannabe.
making loads of money. Where
Yeah.
actually, are they
Mm.
making loads
Yeah.
of money when we're deep diving? But you're right. We're spending more and more time online, and it brings those consequences, particularly for the young brains.
Yeah, and the privacy, our data is being sold. It's
Hmm.
clearly being sold, which is why we're seeing those adverts. It's being used and tracked in ways that we don't fully understand. And it's not with full transparency either, because we're not told what's happening to it and who's doing it.
And
And
who
I
it's
think
being
to a
sold
young,
to?
yeah, and a young impressionable, you know, teenager, child can be very easily swayed by that, particularly with this, comparison culture. And, it's quite interesting that you say that, they want to be influencers. Um, do they really? I don't know.
Well, I think
There's
the point is
ups.
they don't know the other side of it. I'm
Yes.
lucky if that's the word, but a lot of my
Yeah.
clients have been well-known people. And I'll admit, when I was younger, oh, I want to be a celebrity. In my day, I want to be on TV, I want to be. And then you actually see the darker side of it and
Mm.
realize these people are criticized, they're picked on, that, the newspapers, and it used to be just newspapers then. Nowadays, it's the whole of social media and the whole world can comment on what you look like or what you're wearing or what they think you're doing, or it's those sorts of comments, isn't it? Oh, he's come
Yeah.
out looking very concerned. No, he's just walked out the shop, but
Yeah.
it
Oh,
puts an idea.
but it's a massive part, influences of,
Mm.
of what I call the online ecosystem. They set trends, they shape opinions, and they drive billions in sales. So you can see why people want to be one. But behind that polished content and curated feeds, the reality is much more complex. Some genuinely love what they do, and others are actually starting to become very pressured to feel relevant, to constantly to perform, to be on all the time.
Mm.
And that leads to burnout, loneliness, and a blurred vision between work and identity, which is, I think, is a bit like being a media, a reality star, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's that
it's
kind
actually
of,
you then lose, who am I? Because have I
yes.
become this reality star that isn't the real me underneath it? And I
Hmm.
think, again, you're talking about the pressure. And when I deal with clients, it's definitely that pressure to perform, to always be on. And it doesn't have to be what I call, celebrities. It can be the general accounts on Instagram who are suddenly
Hmm.
growing and then feel the pressure that I must post, I must post. And if they don't post, they then feel they have to apologize because they haven't posted to their
Yes, yeah.
followers.
How many
And it's
times do you
just
see, oh,
like,
sorry, I've not been on the grid?
yes, the amount of times you see that, or sorry, I haven't posted anything for a while. I've been busy, and I think,
Yeah.
oh, I'm very sporadic, kind of. You'll get a load and then I'm busy, and you don't get anything for a while, and then you'll get a
Yeah.
load and then I'm busy. And it's
Mhm.
that balance, isn't it? That precious kind
Yeah,
of
but
moment in time.
yeah, but I think then they lose their authenticity
Yeah.
because, they can't keep going the way that they started because they've suddenly become this, they've grown into this enormous being that's not really them anymore. What happens, when trust breaks? How many times have you seen, say, an influencer sort of
Mm,
showing you a skincare product
yeah.
and then raving about it, and then you realize actually it was an ad and it's not, it's a transaction. It's not a reality, and they haven't actually said it's an ad, and then the trust is broken. So they're treading a very thin line as an influencer. And also, of course, there's the cancel culture. We've seen what's happened to quite a few celebrities recently, and
Hmm.
that can happen to influencers too. They can quickly, overnight, be cancelled. So they're living under a lot of stress and pressure, I feel. I don't know if
Absolutely.
you
And
think that, but
well, I think that as well. And people don't think about what happens if my account suddenly is stopped, if my account is cancelled. There was all
or
that
hacked.
outcry,
Yeah,
wasn't there,
yeah,
with was it Trump was going to stop TikTok, and people were, my life is ruined. I'm an influencer. This is all, my whole business is gone. And I just think, wow, that's the
yeah.
pressure to be on all day. I mean, the brain's not designed to be on all day. We're
Hmm,
just not designed to do that. And I think when you watch some of the videos, and I know there's a team behind, and again, I think this is something that I had never really considered. It's just
mhm.
ridiculous, but it just shows how you get swept in, that some of these people have a whole team of people behind them. They're not
Yeah.
creating this content. They're being told, go do this, go do that. I have
Hmm,
a very good friend, and she's got a little team who said, oh, apparently now it's not good enough that I can just sit and talk at the camera when I'm doing my little reels. I've got to be making a cup of coffee, or I've got to be, doing something rather than just sitting talking. And again, you kind of go, when you look, wow, actually, there's a whole
hmm.
team of people behind this
Yeah, yeah. So it's not really,
creating the
once they,
content.
yeah. So they've sort of grown out of themselves into a persona, really, haven't they? It's not real. I mean, I don't know if you've heard that somebody told me the other day about Thirsty Thursdays. That's when
No.
influencers or want to be influencers actually put out content that is thirsty. I mean, the algorithm works, the more comments you get and the more reaction, then the
Yes.
more it's sent out to other people. So they actually are
Yes.
putting out posts that are thirsty. One might be if they're in a bikini or something saying, oh, look at this view, it's amazing, when really it's really about them, and they're wanting you to say, wow, don't you look good in a bikini? And
Yeah.
or they could say, oh, just cleaning. Oh, just caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. Oh, I look. Oh, do I look okay today? And it's just so, all these followers then come in and say, of course you do. You look really, really good. And so that's what a thirsty Thursday post is.
Ah.
Whether it happens just on a Thursday, I don't know. But, sort of, or they'll say something like, there's lots of things I can tell you, but I can't tell you at the moment. So you're hanging, oh, tell me, or is there something, what's
Yeah.
going on in your life? And it's sort of getting pity as well is another one. So
But it's like a soap
that's,
opera. If
yes,
in some ways, I
yes,
was I was
yeah,
analyzing my own behavior, which is what I do, is I look at my own behavior, and I think this, a lot of these accounts are, oh, I wonder what they're doing next. I wonder what's happening next. And that's the old fashioned, I know there's still soap operas around on TV, but
mm,
that's the whole point, isn't it? Is that you're addicted to knowing what happens next, what are they doing next, what's happening,
mm,
what are they up to, what are they doing? So we're getting
mm,
into a whole load of, if you like, individual little soap operas where people are
yeah.
now acting in them.
Yes, yeah. And
It's,
so that, yeah, so they're actually sort of saying they're probably posing in a little bit of state of undress as well. That's quite another one to get attention.
yeah.
The more sort of provocative it is, the more then you'll get reaction.
Well, it's also provocative in terms of getting a reaction in posting something negative. So I will
Yes.
deliberately make a comment that I know is going to rile up a whole load of people. So
Yes.
I'm quite prepared for a lot of negative stuff to come at me. And then I know a lot
Mm.
of positive stuff will come because the negatives will be had to go out by the positive people and people will disagree. And of course, all of that is actually engagement. So
Mm.
you're doing the first post, not really commenting on much, maybe putting in a comment here and there, but all that negative stuff coming through is, of course, increasing the awareness of your own post. And it was a friend of mine, Jamie, who I do the other podcast with, who was saying, well,
Mhm.
that's good. When a negative comment comes in, he said, I'm not floored by it because what it allows me to do is comment on it. And that, of course, drives the algorithm even more. So, in fact, what they're doing is they are helping my own account grow. And I thought,
Mm.
oh, I'm a coach, and I think that's a really good way. But it's when it affects you personally, doesn't it? When
Yes.
and the amount of people who are being affected
Yeah.
personally, and the comparison is huge.
And it has a really big effect, like I said before, on self-confidence. And I think that's really a trend that's increasing and increasing because the algorithm is pushing people to make negative comments and to make something controversial. I mean,
Yeah,
there's lots of people who want to be an influencer whose accounts are sort of haven't quite reached that level yet. I mean, we've all seen that influencers work with each other. Everybody's seen, win this prize, um, to followers both, may give
yeah,
somebody's name. We've all seen those. We all know what's happening there. But underneath that, there's another layer of that, which is where influencers get together. There's something called comment pods. I don't know if you know about that. There's where a small group of influencers actually get together and agree to like, comment, and share each other's posts. So really, they're working the algorithm to make it look as if people are much more interested than it's
they
actually
really
real.
are.
Yes, and that's one thing that they do. Another thing here I've got, it's DM networking. And that's where they coordinate with other influencers when they post. So they know exactly when they're going to post. And apparently, the first 10 to 15 minutes of a post, if it gets comments straight away, that's when the algorithm kicks in and starts sending it out. So they talk
Ah,
to other influencers and they all then know exactly what time that post is going on and comment. They do it obviously vice versa as well. And that actually boosts it. There's all sorts of, you know, the way that influencers get together because they have influencer meetings, the
mhm.
social media companies actually get them together in a room, and so do their agencies. It is an agency, their team, isn't it? It's an agency.
Yeah.
So that. So I think they're the things you sort of kinds of need to look out for. What's happening really? But I mean, there's some good tactics if you want to be an influencer. There's there's 6 ways here I've got that I researched that you can actually use.
Follow these. Janet, you'll be
Yeah.
running a course on social media on how to become an influencer.
Yes. Yeah.
Give my
But
my top tips, my top 6 tips to
tips.
how to be an
Yeah.
influencer.
Yeah. So, there's a negative, but, if, on the other side of it, if I'm one of the people actually being targeted by some of this, it's not authentic, is it?
No,
So,
but how
but
do you know what and what
yes.
isn't authentic these days? And
Yeah.
unfortunately, also that's for the influencers themselves. So they might be doing
Yes.
this and knowing that some of this is coming to them, but then how do they know which ones are the authentic ones? And
Yeah.
which aren't on that
Yes.
side of things. So just, I don't know, driven by money, driven by different values to me. And I think that's also, but having said that, the good side is I see the other side where people are saying, no, you can get out the rat race and you can have a little homestead and you
Yeah.
can do up here's how we did it. And I mean, I personally like those accounts because I think, wow,
Mm.
I'm really not after what's going to be good makeup for me and the clothes that I
Mm.
need to buy and the holidays I need to go on. I'm not swayed by that. I'm very much swayed in the other direction of let's get away from the corporate. So it's a bit of that dilemma that there's one side of social media I think I don't really like it, but the other side I really do. It's I suppose my version of I really ought to be a vegetarian or a vegan because I like animals, but on the other hand, I like eating meat. It's one of those
Yes.
one of those
Yeah.
moments.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
And
mean, and some of the tips, I love watching some of the tips, but now I've
mm,
realized that sometimes when they start by saying, my grandmother told me this, I thought there's too many grandmothers here telling them
yes,
things. So, that's all curated. But there is some great tips on there. There's gardening, some
yep,
really good ones. I know you're into gardening too.
yep, definitely into
House
gardening.
renovation,
Yep, I like
upholstery. There's
those.
some great upholstery. So I found lots of really good, but it's finding them. I think we talked about last time. It's the needle in the haystack, isn't it?
Yes, it's finding those accounts, but
Mm.
being aware of the accounts that are influencers. I think maybe we're older, so we're, dare I say, a little bit wiser to it rather than the
Yeah,
teens who I think was it a few years ago. I know our neighbour across the road, her 11-year-old daughter was into I think it was Suella, a girl called Suella, who was influencing all the teenagers
yeah,
about what they needed to buy
yes,
and the clothes and we
yeah.
had however many million, and she was on YouTube and earning a fortune from it. And Clive and I were looking thing, and even Trish, the mum, was like, she just posts, oh look, I'm wearing this today, and she said she's got a million people following. Now, which do you think I should wear, this one or this one? And her daughter was well into it, was addicted
Mm,
to seeing
mm,
what she was doing, and I need to buy this, and that's the trick, isn't it? They don't realize they're being influenced at
mm.
that age because we all at that age they all want to be part, or not just that age actually, even older, want to be part of a group, want to be part of a community, and it's
Yeah,
making
and
sure
that's
it's
what
the
they do,
right
isn't it?
community. Yeah, they
Yeah, I mean,
create that.
yeah, it's psychological tactics, isn't it? It's FOMO.
Yes,
They use a lot of FOMO. Countdown timers is another. Exclusive deals. I mean, you know, and
but
I think you can be any age and fall for it.
yes, I agree. And it's, I mean, I know a lot of people do the early bird, don't they? There's
Yes.
so many early bird and buy them now. And it's a bit, obviously, I've got an airline background, and it used to be the adverts, for, dare I say, sort of like EasyJet or Ryanair or budget, any airline would be saying, you can get a ticket to, I don't know, Spain for £20. And people are like, whoa, get on the site to go and buy it. And we knew that if you're only advertising one seat or selling one seat at £20, you can advertise that you are selling seats at £20. But of course, when
Mm,
somebody gets onto the site, those aren't there. That one seat has been
gone.
sold, but you're encouraged onto the site. And I always thought that
Mm.
was a interesting way of doing it. I mean, social
Yeah,
media
and even
used it
now
to a
when you
whole
go
level.
on to some of the airline ones, it will say
Mhm.
only two seats left at this price.
Correct. It's only two
So
seats to start with.
yeah, well, that's the
Yeah,
bit you don't know. And, yeah, and the early bird thing, how often do you then see them go on after the early bird deadline's passed to say, oh, actually, I
we've
could
ex
extend that now.
yes. And it's being aware, but it's all tactics, isn't it? That we were
Mm,
never privy to before when you didn't have this, when it was just, via a newspaper or a magazine, you were kind of aware what was an advert, who was doing something. The other thing about the adverts is sometimes I do mention something and I feel I'm not being paid for it. I love our coffee and I'll
mm.
mention it and I'll put it on a post, and then I think, oh, hang on a minute. I've not been paid for this. I've bought it. It just so happens that I like it and I'm quite happy to tell people. But then I feel I've got to go and put, oh, not an ad, not a gift, not this, not that,
Yeah.
when just to make sure it isn't. But I just think this is crazy now. So I can't actually mention
Mm,
anything without then saying, this isn't an ad. This haven't been gifted.
mm.
Yeah, lots of say,
Yeah, you just sort of think, oh, should I mention it? Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But
But
yeah, I think it's finding out, isn't it? Who is actually being honest and who just sees you as, do you want, you know, do they want to be my friend or am I just another number? Is it something, are they looking at me as a follower and a friend to gain something financially, socially, or professionally? And
yes,
that's the bit you have to kind of intuitively, I guess, decide on your own merit. But if you're younger, maybe that's not
it's difficult
so
because you just
easy.
want to be part of the group, don't you? And you haven't got the
Mm,
experience to work that out in some
mm,
ways, and you fall for it.
mhm.
Because you will get people, again, when we're talking about being authentic, some of the comments that you get won't be authentic. And what I mean by that is they will comment and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry for you." And they think they're supporting you, supporting a person by saying this, where actually, oh, no, I don't actually believe that. But I just felt she needed, didn't want to hear whatever else was being said at the time. And I think, again,
Mm.
are we being authentic as people who
Mm.
comment? And
Is
it's
there a
that,
herd effect in that then? If you see one comment
yes,
give sympathy, then oh, well, I should be seen to
yes. I mean,
also
it's,
throw in, yeah,
yeah, there's
but
great friendships.
yeah, and there is, and I have, you know,
The reason I
I've met
have,
you, for instance, yeah,
yes.
yeah. So yes, so there are, but I think it's increasingly more and more difficult, and especially if you're trying to be friends with a person who is actually selling things, then that's when I think you need to have your antennae up.
I
Lots
agree.
of people are on social media who aren't selling anything. So that it is really it's a ginormous shopping mall, isn't it?
Yes.
That's what it is. But it's designed to feel casual and personal. So, and that's where you need to be careful.
And sometimes it
Uh,
is that, again, do you sort out with some of the accounts that I follow? They are authentic, genuine people. It might be a gardening account or a willow account. And I want to ask, oh, where did you get that knife from?
mm,
And you kind of then going, this is down to me to work out, is this authentic that they were just using that knife? They haven't tried to flog me the knife. I'm talking willow, for example. But then I will ask the question, where did you get that?
mm,
And obviously they then tell you, which means we tend to then go and buy from that person. And it's
mm,
working out, isn't it? Am I asking genuinely, or have they just kind of dropped it in and are
mm.
using it? I'm not advertising it, but I just happen to be using this and you've asked the question. So I mean, it's so difficult these days to work out.
Mm.
The question is, am I being manipulated here? Isn't it?
Well,
It's
quite
really,
often, yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I know that, but that's the algorithm, isn't it? We come onto the algorithm now because that's
Yeah.
manipulating everyone because, we think we're choosing what we see on the grid, on our when we're scrolling down, but a
Yeah.
lot of it we haven't chosen because a lot of it people aren't I'm not following and they're designed to keep us engaged, and they look at us and they actually look at what content makes us scroll more. And that's, if it's emotional, addictive, or extreme, which is terrible, really, isn't it? And so that's
Yeah.
how the algorithm is working because it's making us scroll because it's shocking us sometimes. And that's
It,
where, AI is coming in, because they're trained to actually make us spend as much time as we possibly can scrolling and not it's not about our well-being. It's not about truth. Yeah.
No, it's about keeping us engaged, so somebody somewhere is making big money out of it. Let's be honest,
Mm.
and
Yes.
that's part of it. Behind it, somewhere there is corporate
Mm.
making big money out of it.
Mm.
And it's how do I get to these people? And again, I've noticed I sometimes sit there and think, oh, it'd be lovely to be given something free to use, when I'm
Yeah.
seeing, and then you realize, yes, hang on. If I take gardening as an example, because I'm going to talk about what I know about, and you see that I've got all this wonderful, peat-free compost. Look at this. I've got all this compost that's been delivered. And you realize actually that's about knowing it's good quality. That's like £250 worth of compost. No wonder your garden looks a lot better. And I think that's where we
Mhm.
forget later on that when their vegetables, for example, are doing incredibly well, it's because I've been gifted this amount of really good quality compost, and then somebody's gifted me the cold frames, and then somebody's gifted me all the equipment. There's somebody I know, all her equipment is steel, which is, ST, I think it's spelled like that, STIHL.
Oh,
I don't know if
yeah.
I, and I'm not advertising them. Please just let
But
me
they
know
are
I'm not
good.
advertising them.
Have some.
And you
Yeah.
go, I'd love to have the hedge trimmer, which is like £1,000. I'd
Oh, I haven't
love
got
to
one of
have,
those, but
but you know what I mean?
I
When
have got a
you,
blower. Yes, but I wasn't gifted it.
but it's that, isn't it? That sometimes then that's where the comparison it can have a really negative effect. That I'm
Mm,
working my socks off here in my garden, and how come my garden doesn't look anything like yours? And that's because I haven't been able to afford the expensive compost. I'd love to, when they keep telling you it's really worth it and you ought to. But if you don't have £200 to spend on compost and you have to, and you can only afford the 50, then that's what's going to happen. And again, that's, I think, where the negative comparison comes into play. that you've kind of forgotten about a few months on, if that makes sense.
Mm.
And you just,
Yeah,
ooh,
now often you'll see a designer kitchen from
yeah,
an influencer, but again, it's all you think I'd love one of those, but it's actually all been gifted,
yes. The
and that's the problem. That
wallpaper, the lights, or very,
yes,
very
yeah,
discounted.
yes, oh yeah. Some obviously it's discounted depending on the level of influencer you are. I think
Yeah.
there's a cut-off. It's all very, very carefully worked out as to how many followers you've got if you get it free or you get a discount. But who knows how they work it out? And but
But
that you have to perform
yes.
in
And
your
then
kitchen or in your
your
garden.
whole, well, you could bring in Meghan Markle here, who's done this. Oh, come into my kitchen, which isn't her kitchen at all,
Yes,
But that's
yeah,
it, isn't it? I mean, taken to that extreme,
yeah, and
it's
Then you watch the homemade jam, but where, well, did you do all those jars then? I don't know.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But that's it. You don't know. So you can either go one way or the other, and you
Mm,
don't know. And when you're looking at somebody's house and thinking, if you're doing up a house and you're not particularly somebody who posts a lot, because there are a lot of people who are just watching, they're not bothered about interacting in terms of having their own account, but they love to see other people's accounts. And if you're doing up your own house and then you're seeing somebody else's house, you're thinking, how are they affording to make it look that good? How are they managing to get the cushions? How are they doing this when it looks like they're doing it all themselves?
mm,
And it can really have that's a deep dive again, isn't it? It can really make you feel quite depressed, quite down, makes you feel like a failure, um,
yes,
and that
yeah,
you're not good enough. And again, that comes, well, I'm not good enough
mm,
to get all this stuff given to me.
yeah. And
So,
often there's a team, isn't there? I think that's on some of the, there's a team behind it as well who then go in and do some of the
mhm,
work.
mhm.
So you're not even, so but it's that reality versus what's really being shown. But I do think it causes obviously mental issues with younger generation, because they've become sort of, they can't really, it's that definition, what's real, what's not. And
Yeah,
how do you know anymore? And I think it's getting increasingly difficult. And I think, I don't know, well, what is the future of social media? That I think there's more and more skepticism, there's more questioning, the polished influencer world and asking for more transparency. And I think regulation may help, but it's certainly not been, it's quite slow. But there are new
well,
platforms emerging, built around communities.
again, I think it's once people are sucked in, and I'm talking younger generation maybe, are they questioning? We might be questioning, we might be looking
Oh,
for the transparency, but
yeah.
actually, are they questioning it? It's as
Yes.
much as you're saying, don't give anybody your details, don't do this, don't do that. It's amazing how many people say, oh, well, it was only on this app, or it was only, no, it's harmless because. And you
Mm,
think it's like telling people when we were little, don't talk to strangers.
mm,
And yet, what are they doing?
yeah.
Openly talking to strangers, and
Mm,
people don't know what's being shown them is now coming out, isn't it, with regards
mm,
to smartphones. So is social media, it's this ever debate between social media and having smartphones and what age people have them, going forward, where's the jealousy, where is AI, because it's
mm,
so difficult
yeah.
to know. It's really
Mm,
difficult to know. And when you see celebrities going, this is not me. This is shocking.
mm,
Even they've looked at it. And, one person was being interviewed and saying, I looked at it and thought, that's me. That's my voice. I don't remember doing this ad. When did I do this? And I had to ask their agent. They were like, you never have.
mm,
It's like, wow,
mm.
this is really scary.
Yeah, and I
This
mean
is
they're using
really
their music
scary.
as well, and
Yeah.
also, yeah, there's lots of issues on that as
Well,
well.
it's all the creative as well. I mean, now you're talking
Yeah.
more AI coming into social
Yes.
media, aren't you?
Yeah.
So actually,
Mm,
yeah, you will then, I'm married to a musician and they're
yeah.
already seeing issues.
Yes.
How do we police this? How do we
Yeah.
even earn, a living from this? Because we just can't.
Mm,
So again, it's one way it's creating jobs here, but it's taking it away elsewhere.
yeah.
And will we as humans start to lose that creative edge because
Yeah.
somebody else can create our reels for us? We
Yeah.
just pump
Exactly.
it in
I mean,
and bang.
how many influencers are actually using AI to even now generates everything. Hopefully
Oh,
not many, but yeah.
oh, now you've opened up another can of worms because
Yeah.
again, you're saying maybe not many, but why wouldn't you when you can put
Mm,
into like Chat GPT, you can just type something in and wallop, out it comes, tells you what to do, what you need to do within minutes.
mm.
So, yeah, how much is actually my own idea, or I'm just saying, oh, this is what I want, and then I get told what to do it. That's a whole other ball game. But as you say, what is the future? What do you think is the future of social media?
Well, I think it's going to have more and more regulation because of all these issues that are coming out, particularly now AI is going in. So I just think there's going to have to be um, more declaration of what's real and what's not, and declaring, that they're being paid, uh, or just more transparency, I think is what I feel is going to happen. And a move away, I think, to these other platforms that are not revenue ad based. You
Yeah,
still,
and I'm going to
like
say
Substack.
yet.
Yes,
What is
yet.
Substack? For people who don't know what Substack
Well,
is, what is Substack?
I describe it as between a blog and an email. So
Okay.
it's where writers and things can, you can share lots of different things. There's money involved, but it's not advert driven. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's more around, it's built more around community. I don't use it myself, I have to say, though I don't anymore. But that's how I understand it. But as I'm not
Because I often
an
see
expert.
other names popping up saying, oh, I'm not doing
Yeah.
this anymore. I'm off and I'm using, there's another one,
Yeah.
not blue sky, blue, I can't think what it is off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But my question there is, as that gets larger and
Mm,
they need more people to run the platform, does that then actually mean you end up going full? Because where's that money coming from?
yeah.
They're
Yes.
small at the moment, aren't they, compared to
Yes.
Instagram
Yeah.
or
Compared
TikTok
to
or
the
or
meta
Facebook or the,
universe.
the meta
Yeah.
universe? They are
Yeah.
actually very, very small. So whilst you can
Mm,
start off going, this is the ideal, I want it to be like this, and I don't want it to have adverts, and I'm not going to have this, and we're not going to have that. As it grows, and you then need more people in customer service because people are starting to complain, because the website's
mm,
not working properly, because this isn't happening because of that. Then actually, how are you going to get the money to do that
mm.
if you're not then bringing in advertisers?
Yeah.
So
So I
that's
guess it's and then if any of the other existing like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, um, for some reason start declining in terms of revenue, then those advertisers are going to look for revenue elsewhere. So
yes, but
it's
that's what happens, isn't it? As one grows, they want to be on all of them
yeah,
to
yeah,
kind of get the full audience. And I think that's
yeah,
always my thoughts is, yeah, this is a great idea and it's working and we're not advert based and it's amazing and it's fantastic. But then as you get bigger and bigger and bigger and you need more and more and more and more staff, how do you
mm,
bring in the money? Does it then become a subscription site? Is that how you then, approach it?
mm,
So then do the people pay a subscription to log onto the site? Do your creators have to pay a subscription to be on there? And again, then are you getting swayed? So it's
mm,
always interesting, I think,
mm.
to go, yes, well, there's these things over here. Hmm. But when they get to the size of this thing over there,
Yeah. Is it just yeah? And
will
but
it
what's
just
going to
do
happen? I
it?
think what will influencers do then? Will they move across? I mean, how many influencers can you end up with? Because that must be diluting and putting pressure on them. Because as more and more grow, and there's certainly lots of people hovering around who want to be, and people even call themselves that even when they've got 9,000 followers versus 500,000. So it's getting diluted, and then that I think drives the influencers to possibly be less authentic to keep
Hmm.
using those tactics that I talked about in the pods and things like that to drive their
But that's
accounts to
also an
keep
addiction,
money
isn't
in.
it? You know
That's
what I
yeah,
mean?
they're in it. Yes,
They're an addict. Actually, an
yes,
influencer is an addict, in my
yes,
view, and it's a personal view. I would say an
yeah,
influencer is an addict because once they start to get all this attention, then they
Mm.
want it more, and then they realize I can get my, if it's they're doing up a house, I can get my kitchen paid for, I can get the wallpaper done, I can do this, I can do that. Oh, I don't have to do a corporate job anymore. I can now concentrate on doing up my big house. And suddenly
Mm.
they realize they are now addicted as
Mm.
much as the people who are watching their account. It never
Yes.
started out that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as
Some
you say,
people
that
become
it's
it. They just had
accidentally.
a viral reel, and suddenly they're an influencer. It didn't mean to be.
Yes,
Yeah.
but then they get approached because it's gone viral. So that's the circle, isn't it? They then get
Yes.
approached and get given more goods to say, can you
Mm.
advertise this? Can you advertise this? And do it that way. And some will even go, they'll advertise you once, and then you're never mentioned again, and you've given them free stuff. And I know that's happened with some people that I know,
Mm.
have said, oh, well, I'll give this person, something. They get one mention, that's it. And they sort of say, oh, is there any
Mm.
chance you could mention me again? And it's, well, have you got anything else that you want me to mention?
Mm.
And that again, you forget, don't you? So,
Mm.
okay, I've mentioned at the beginning, but when you see me in my beautiful garden, my beautiful kitchen, on my lovely holiday, then I'm not
Mm.
mentioning that everything you see around me. So that's the subliminal
Yes.
information going in.
Yeah, because it was mentioned once, and then you're featuring it on different reels. Yes.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
for somebody watching who probably wasn't watching you or on your account when you first advertised it, it looks like you've got this wonderful kitchen. I think that's, again, how far do you then scroll back to go, was this an advert, this kitchen? Did they get gifted it? How many of
Mm.
us are asking that when we see somebody? As we're saying
Yes.
kitchens for some reason. I don't know why, but
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
so
It just seems to be a lot of ads on Instagram for kitchens. Maybe that's, or maybe that's just
maybe
what
we're
AI is
influenced, you
feeding
see.
me.
Correct.
Yes.
Again, you see how we're talking about it, but it's actually what it's feeding you,
Yeah.
because it
It's
wouldn't be
feeding me.
feeding my husband. He
Yeah,
gets a lot of the
exactly.
music stuff and the stuff that he's interested in, and
Yeah,
it's
it's
always very
quite different actually. If you look at
mm,
what men are actually pushed versus
absolutely.
women, yeah, there's
Yes.
certainly a bias there.
Yeah, there's
Yes.
definitely
Yeah.
and then that brings us round to, is that why they're getting influenced? You're getting
Mm.
to a different area again with misogyny and how to treat women, and because what they're getting shown, I believe that was the basis of adolescence. As I say, I'm not talking from any experience here,
Mm.
just bits that I read. And so are they getting skewed as well,
Yes.
and what they're being shown is very different to what we're being shown. So male, female being set against each other in some ways. I mean, you could just go on
Mm.
forever with this, can't you?
Yes. Yeah.
How are we being
Yeah.
influenced? As you say, we're seeing the
But
ads.
aren't most influencers female? I don't know.
And no, that would be an interesting piece of research. Or
I don't know.
are we
Yes.
only seeing them because we're
Yeah.
female and that's what it's feeding us?
Yes. Is
No,
that what
no,
it
I
is?
definitely, I definitely know of a few people that I follow
Mm.
that are male and influencers.
Ah,
The
right. So
gardening,
maybe it's what
the
I'm
top
being fed.
gardeners. Yes.
Yeah.
So my
That's
gardening
interesting.
side, there's a lot of guys on there. There's a lot of
Ah.
guys on there who are doing up houses.
Mm.
Definitely influencers with
Mm.
all the stuff that you see that they're being given. So again, are we getting it skewed that we're making a decision, a bias,
Mm.
that, oh, it's only women that are influenced? No, I think you'll find
Mm.
there's an awful lot of men, depending on the gender role. We're getting into all that as well.
Yes. Yeah.
That's, yeah, yeah,
Mm.
they see something
Mm.
very different. It's often interesting to see what my husband sees as opposed to, well, I never see things like that. No, because
Yes. Yeah.
we've got,
Apart from the ads where you've talked about things together.
yes, and then we both get it.
Yeah, you do.
Yes.
I've watched that. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Regulation, how far can we regulate? Will all countries
Mm.
regulate? Will
Well,
they
I think
force it? How do
films
we
like Adolescence will possibly have, they're the sort of thing that will possibly have an impact. Yeah.
you would hope, but
Mm.
and schools that are starting to ban. I think there's now one in Australia that's banned all kids from
Yes, I
having
read about that.
smartphones,
Yes.
and parents aren't allowed to give the kids smartphones.
Mm.
So you kind of go, is there, and that's all I can hope, an underlying current that will change us. I'm just pleased that my son was the other side. He was well clear, or very much on his way out of, probably 18, something like that, when smartphones first started to come
Yeah.
in, and definitely social media. started to come in. And I think
Mm.
it's really interesting. There are some places that will ban phones. I'm a big golf fan as well. As you say, we've
Yeah,
just
I
talked
am.
about
Yeah,
golf and the
yeah.
Masters.
Yes.
And it was one of the commentators on the Masters said, "Have you noticed there's no phones because they're
Gosh,
banned at
yeah.
Augusta?"
Oh, because that would be terrible if that went off just as you take in your drive. Yeah.
But it's not in all, not in all tournaments, but Augusta,
Wow.
absolutely. And you
Mm,
suddenly realize that, yeah, people aren't filming. When you look at the
mm.
audience, they're actually watching things
Yes.
without watching it through a phone.
Yeah, they're not thinking, what, how can I get this shot for my next reel? They're
Exactly,
actually, yes, because they can't. They've
because they
actually,
can't.
yes.
Yeah. Is
Yeah.
that the way to go? Then actually at some big events, we know, you say no phones, no smartphones. You'll be, because it happens in the theatre, don't they? When people go, will you?
It just, even though there's a notice, have you noticed that? I mean, it flashes up, no photography. I mean, how many people then do you actually see not only photographing, but they're videoing as well,
Exactly.
stuck in front of you when you're trying to watch the play? I mean,
Yes.
it's incredible. Like,
Yes.
but it's not enforced.
So which came first? It's a chicken and egg situation, really, isn't it? Smartphones or social media or smartphones? Which drives which?
Well, I think smartphones drive it, but
Because to be able to be on it the whole time, you've
yes,
got to have a smartphone. If you
yeah,
have
carry it
an
around.
old
Yeah,
analog phone, yes, but
yeah,
carrying it around
yeah.
and the addiction to it.
Yeah,
And
to
it
see, I've put a post up this morning. I just need to, I mean, some people are just monitoring, to see how many comments they get and how many likes. And that's the addiction, unfortunately.
and I think that's very sad that, well, I'm going to caveat it again because one minute I said it's really sad that we're looking for that for friends, but then there's a situation where people can't get out.
Yes, yes.
And that is the beauty and the positive. My
Yeah,
sister, for
exactly.
example, been suffering brain aneurysms, really struggling at the
Oh,
moment, and her connection is via, she's not on social media, but the ability to use WhatsApp to contact
mm,
friends is huge.
mm.
And it's, yeah, social media. What are we actually saying here then, Johnny? Good, bad,
I
or
think I think there's a
keep
lot of good.
buyer beware?
Well, there's a lot of good, an awful lot of good, and
I
we both, I'm not looking for my likes, you're not looking for your likes, and we're not doing that. So there is an awful lot of good, and I just have to filter. I call it a filter in my mind what I
Mm,
want to. I'll skip past all these things that are being forced into my grid, and I don't look at them. And quite often, I'll press the button at the top to say, "Don't want to see this anymore."
yeah.
If it's really annoying me, if I've seen it about 500 times. So yeah, I think it's just being aware really of the what's going on and how you could be manipulated, the role of influencers, and how the authenticity is possibly questionable sometimes of some posts that you might see. Yeah,
Do you think that has to start in school? So
I
should
do.
there be a lot more in school taught about the role of influencers, the impact of comparison, of the critical analysis? I mean, years ago you used to
Yes.
do critical analysis. I know they
Hmm.
don't do that. Is that
Yeah.
somewhere where a starting point for poor
Yeah, I
old
think
schools?
yeah, I think it is, because it's actually driven some children to suicide, hasn't it?
Hmm.
And there's been quite a
Huge
few
amount.
cases. Yeah, so I think it has to be, and I'm sure it is addressed. I mean, I don't know because I haven't got children or I haven't got any grandchildren either, so I don't know. But definitely, I would see that they must be addressing it because they've all had, I'm sure, in each class, somebody who's been affected by it in a negative way. So
It's just
hopefully,
unfortunate
starting.
that a lot of them don't see that it's bullying.
Yes. Yes, because
And
it's not. Yeah.
how sad that what we're looking for ever more shock tactics to be able to post, i.e., a child being beaten up is being
Yes.
filmed and then posted on social media
Yeah.
because,
Yes.
and I think there was one comment of one girl who was sent to prison. Oh, well, I'm famous now. That's all I wanted.
Yes. I saw that.
And you
Yes.
just
I'll be
think,
on television, she
I'll be
said,
on
didn't she?
television.
I'll
Yes,
be
I'll
on
be
television
famous. I'll be on
tonight.
television tonight.
Mm.
And that's when you go,
Mm.
that for me is the dark side. How
Yes.
far and these extreme challenges that people
Yes. But
post.
that's particularly a TikTok thing, isn't it? Yes.
I'm not on TikTok,
Yeah.
so, but
No, I'm not either,
is
but I
that
just
the
read.
really dark side? Because we're so desperate to have that notoriety to be seen that we'll
Mm.
do even more and more shocking things.
Yeah.
And that even goes down to that female, can't remember what her name is, not that bothered, who was, posting about sleeping with however many men. And you just
Oh,
think,
yeah.
wow, is
Yeah.
this where we've got to go to get our validation?
But maybe it's a role of an influencer who can actually get these messages across as well. An
I
influencer
agree.
who's, because we're not knocking influencers. Don't want to
No,
come
can I,
across that we're
can
not
I,
because,
no, no,
yeah,
absolutely. And I think there are some really good influencers out there and the
yes,
really good role models. In
yes,
that, I would, when we were talking about influencers being male, Ben Fogle.
yes, brilliant.
He's,
Exactly. Yeah.
to
Life off the
me,
grid and yes, yeah,
absolutely. He posts, he's very honest. He does say when he's got an advert. As far as I'm aware, here we go.
yes.
You even start questioning the authenticity
Yeah.
of some people. But for me, he's a positive role model. There,
Mm,
there are those that are the positive role models. So
mm.
when we're talking about influence, absolutely, there are males out there that I think are brilliant, and
Yeah. So
that's who
they
you'd
could
want
have a
them.
role in educating
Yeah, which
children.
is, I think they're trying to do that. When you look
Yeah,
at some of their posts, they're
yeah.
definitely looking to try and influence children, males as well,
Mm,
about, what is the role of male, that you can be this and you can be that. So
mm,
absolutely, I think there are, when I think about it now, there are quite a few male influencers out there that give a real positive. So again, we've got to be careful of what are we saying as an influencer, that we're not
mm.
saying they're all bad, because I think there are
No,
some really good ones out
brilliant.
there who are
Yeah.
doing everything they can to raise awareness, to make changes, whether that be on the female side, somebody like Mel Robbins,
Yes, and I mean,
with all that she's
I
doing. Have you got
yeah,
her
I have her
book?
book. Yes,
I
yes.
haven't
Let
got it.
them. Oh, the
Yes.
let them theory.
Yes,
Yes,
I'm going to end up having to get it,
you
because
must get it.
very nice compliments. As quite a few of my clients have contacted me who've read it and said, "Oh, the trouble is, Jill, I know most of this because you've taught it to me. You could have made millions." It's like,
Yes. Yeah.
it's all
But it's
right,
a
fine.
but it's a great book to sort of ground you again. You
Yeah,
can't control what people do or say about you, but you can control the way you react. I think that's one of the main things I
yeah.
got. I haven't finished it all yet, I have to say, but I'm wading through it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I
Yeah.
think there are some really good influencers, and I would hope that we get more and more people who aren't afraid to come out and say things and be authentic in that way. And I
Yes.
don't mean be authentic to get the emotional sympathy, and some of them say, look, I'm not posting this to get sympathy. I'm just posting this for X, Y, and Z,
Hmm.
just to raise awareness. So maybe we should have a raise awareness. But yeah, there's quite a few males now I think about it that I do follow that I would
Hmm.
say are influencers, but in such a great way.
Yeah, and so many women too. But
Yeah,
it's
yeah, and women.
it's
I'm not just saying
it's
men,
yeah,
sorry, no.
yeah, no. But it's the needle in the haystack again, isn't it? It's just finding the ones. And the trouble is, when somebody does say something like you've said, they're not posting it for that. There's so many people who are posting it for that. And I think it's
Yes.
the wannabe influencer that's probably the more um
Want to be
sort of
aware
in
of?
or yeah, yes, inauthentic, I suppose. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's to go
Yeah.
with that person. So
Yeah.
social media, in conclusion,
Hmm.
is, for me, social media is a good thing,
Me too.
but,
Yeah.
and there's a big but,
Mm,
be very aware of what you are taking in, about
mm,
what is an advert, what is an influencer, and avoid comparing your own life to them,
mm. Yeah, because it's
because
not reality.
it's not
Yeah.
reality. It might seem
Mm,
like it's reality because they live in the same sort of house as you and they've got a couple of kids, but actually if they're a gardener, don't compare, because a lot of the stuff they've been given can well be have been gifted.
mm.
Yeah, and just be aware of what you are watching. Even further down the line, as I said earlier,
Yes.
you might not have seen that that was gifted because you weren't
Mm.
following them then. So just be aware of what you're actually doing, and you're good enough. That's my
Yes.
finishing. I think, you know
Yeah.
what? Wherever you are, you're good enough.
Yes. Yeah,
And there's
absolutely.
you can
Yeah.
be an influencer in many different ways, and it doesn't have to be by being famous, because they could
No,
fall. So yeah, a bit of a deep
absolutely.
dive. We've got a huge amount, haven't we? You say, the algorithms are all we've talked about, and how they're designed to keep us. Oh, there was one thing you mentioned that shadow banning. You gave me the
Oh,
expression
shadow
shadow
banging.
banning just before we
Yes.
finished. What is shadow banning?
So that's actually real. It does happen. That's when, for some reason, the algorithm is not pushing your content out there. It's actually decided not to. So, you can have an account and you want to grow, but for some reason you've been shadow banned. Nobody really knows why or what's making that do that, but I suspect it's an AI thing
Right.
that's actually doing that. That's what shadow banning is. Yeah. Yeah.
And that will explain why sometimes I'll get a story or something that has 150 people, for example. I don't always look, but sometimes you go, what? And other ones will
Yeah.
have 20
Yes.
because I've been shadow banned for whatever
Yes.
reason.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
called Beat the Algorithm, I think, Janet, isn't it? And
Yes.
it's going to be
Yeah.
beat AI, beat the algorithm, and
Yes.
be authentic.
Yeah.
If you
And
can
it
work
doesn't
out what
matter.
authentic is.
And it doesn't matter how many followers you've got,
No,
and
it
it doesn't
doesn't.
matter how many likes or how many comments,
No,
it
it
really
doesn't.
doesn't.
Because if somebody goes missing, if you know what I mean, if they unfollow
Yes.
you, would you know it was that person? Whereas if you've got a small group of friends, if we're taking it to the personal, small
Yeah.
group of friends, somebody disappears out your life, you
You
know
would
they've
probably
gone.
know. Yes.
Yes. You know,
Yes.
you would probably be aware. When
Yeah.
it's you've got thousands of followers, how do people
Yeah.
actually I've never understood how people keep up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know.
You know, they follow
Yes.
so many people and there's 10,000 followers. How do you keep up? Are you actually picking comments or is it part of a team? And that's where my brain goes. Have we got a team working on this lot that are responding?
Well,
We'll
there's
never
also
know.
and there's also that thing if you follow lots more people than you have got followers, then the
Yeah.
algorithm is going to think that you're a spam account. So you should always have a balance. You should never have more following more than you have followers, because
Oh, right.
otherwise you'll be called spam in the algorithm.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
Because what lots of people do is they start an account and they follow thousands of people
Yeah.
to try and get followers. So
Right.
you're actually looking a bit like a bot, if you know what I mean. So that's
Okay.
really important too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go and check my Instagram account now and see if I've what my balance is of
Yeah, the
followers to
ratio. Have a
following. I
look.
have to look at the ratio.
Yes.
Janet, as always, really good. I think there's always a lot more meat to this, isn't there? And you could go
Yes.
on a
You
lot
could.
more
Yeah.
then talking
Yeah.
about it and how do we work it out and I think the corporates, if they have got a conscience, well, um, need to look at it. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, what can happen is you might start something, as you're talking about, like these new accounts. It might be me. I've got the best, will in the world, best meaning to do an account and make sure that it meets everything. But of course, my business gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I get a team around me, a board of people. They remove me, or I get overridden, and suddenly this goes in another direction. I mean, that's
Mm.
like people with charities, isn't it? They start a
Yeah.
charity, it's their passion. They start the
Mm.
charity, they get a board of trustees, and then they actually find they're thrown out their own charity. I think I said final parting shot about 10 minutes ago.
Yep.
It's
No.
about be very aware when you're looking for those needles in the haystack and make sure you discard ones that just don't ring true. And every now and then just have a review, which is what I've done. And there have been a
Mm.
couple of people that were genuine, that were doing up houses and, started as a small
Mm.
account. And then their whole account, as I say, has just shifted into having to make fancy reels and they're getting
Mm.
nights away. And you kind of think, what's this got to do? And that's when
Mm.
I suddenly became, so now you're advertising being in a hotel overnight and isn't it lovely? And you've been gifted this. What's that got to do with you doing up your house? And that's when I
Yes.
thought, why? No, this isn't what I was following you for to start with.
Mm.
So, but it's amazing how it sneaks in. So be aware, it's
Yes.
a subliminal, slow change.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the account is very different, but you're still engaged in the soap opera. So.
Mm.
Jana, as always,
Yep.
thank you. Great to
No, thank
chat
you.
to
It's been a pleasure.
you.
Yeah.
Any
Mm.
comments are always welcome. And as we say, we
Yeah,
are
do.
both on
Yeah.
social media. So we're
Yes,
just
we are.
we're hoping
Yeah.
today to have given a bit of a balance and let people see a bit more of the darker side because so many people actually aren't aware of it. As I said, I didn't know about shadow banning and some of the topics that you did. So
Mm.
thank you very much. And thank you to
Oh,
anybody who's
thank you.
listening. Please feel free to comment. And if you would like to make sure you get all of my episodes, then go to, here I go. Please, I'm going to influence you. Please go to Jill HB and Friends and
No, do go.
subscribe
It's
and
good.
like and comment and all of the above. And do listen to my previous podcast with Janet. It literally is the one before this, the episode before this, is I haven't done one in between, when we started talking about this, and we talked about communities, didn't we, and people trying to suck you in to those and to be aware. So again, thank you very much, Janet.
No,
You
thank
have
you.
a good week. Thanks for opening up a
You too.
discussion, and let's hope that more discussions are opened up
I
by
hope
more
so.
people in this area.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. You take
Thank you.
care.
And you too.